Scotty talks about how he wouldn't mind getting into the gym with Vince Carter. If there was a player in the league, past or present, in his prime that you could lock him in the gym with for an entire week, food, water available, but they're in the gym for the whole week, who's that player and why?
Kevin Durant.
What's more rare about Scotty Barnes is his IQ for the game, his length, his enthusiasm for the game. All of that stuff shines bright when you watch him play. And for a guy, how old is he? 19, 20? I mean, sheesh. He knows how to play the right way, and he's only going to get better.
Just because he's so efficient scoring in the half court, I think Scotty takes similar shots, but I think Kevin Durant is like a master in half court offense and how to be efficient, how to get to your spots, and how to play the game at a high level that doesn't require a lot of energy. He's very efficient with every move that he does. He's not wasting a lot of energy getting to where he needs to be. Every night he's 15 he's like 12 for 17, 13 for 18, things like that. So I'm not like a overly erring person, but I just want him. He's figuring it out for himself and he's going through so much, but I just have my way of just lightly reminding him who he is. I think he had a rough stretch. I just reminded him that he's one of the best players in the world. Don't forget that and wear that shit, that's just an attitude on how you walk, how you lace your shoes up. You the best. It's not that many people who are the best at something in the entire world.
At 22, if he ever needs a little extra, confidence, a little extra reminder of how good he is, this guy, me, in 2007, anointed Kevin Durant as one of the future greats. I was so adamant that the Portland Trailblazers would regret it for the rest of their lives. And for pretty much KD's entire career, from Seattle to OKC to Golden State, he was my favorite player. He remained my favorite player until
The Toronto Raptors select Scotty Barnes.
What's good, y'all? We got to talk about Kevin Durant's Chapter 5, the final chapter, potentially, of one of the greatest players in NBA history, a top 20 player of all time, and personally, I think, the greatest scorer in NBA history. There are very few names that come close, and online, I have read a lot of disrespect. I have read a lot of people saying the Raptors would be stupid to do this. And if you listen to this video, I'm going to show you why the Raptors would not be stupid to do this. This might be one of the more organized, condensed, and hopefully succinct lives that you've ever seen in Pixar basketball history, because I am very serious about this. And 4 days ago at this point, it's been a while, we made a video saying the Raptors' real targets. And we talked about Carter Bryant. We talked about Cam Johnson, and we talked about Kevin Durant. And 2 days later, Jake Fisher comes out and breaks the internet by saying this is real. The Raptors have interest in Kevin Durant, and Durant may actually have interest in the Raptors as well. I'll remind you, this is a young man, 36 years old, a young man. He's a year younger than me, so I'm going to call him a young man. This is a man who has at one point said that the Raptors were his dream team that he wanted to play for growing up because of Vince Carter. This is a guy who has said Toronto is one of his favorite cities to play in. I think in 2017 or 2018, when he was asked, he said this is one of the best cities to play in. He's close with Drake. He was here last Canada Day weekend. So this is certainly not somebody who would scoff at the idea of closing out his career in Toronto. Now, what about the history, the game, right? Are you buying something over the hill? Is this something like Hakeem Olajuwon? Is this a little bit like, are we buying the corpse of Russell Westbrook at this point? I'm going to make a very compelling case for why that's not the case and why KD is going to age very gracefully. I'm going to show you some charts to prove it, and maybe even explore what Kevin Durant is looking for at this stage, what the Raptors should be looking for, what a deal could look like, and why it is, in fact, the perfect story in basketball. Now, as I promised, this will be condensed and very succinct, so let's get to that. as we wait for the piano to go out. Okay. So first and foremost, the market view. Jake Fisher got on to Bleacher Report, and he said at this stage, Kevin Durant is seen more as an expiring contract as opposed to a key asset. So in previous stops, when he was drafted to OKC, he was foundational. He was the franchise piece. When he was brought into Golden State, when he signed and garnered all the snake tags or whatever, he was considered the best player. When he went to Brooklyn, he was considered the best player. He was considered the franchise cornerstone. Even when he went to Phoenix, he was still seen as the best player, maybe someone that Devin Booker could play off of. In his fifth chapter, he will no longer be seen as the foundational piece. He may end up being the best player on the team he goes to, but he is not being looked at as this is the guy that we're going to build 5 championships with. Every team that's ever traded for him has been eyeing a dynasty, eyeing a huge, run at the playoffs and the championships. No, Jake Fisher alluded to the fact that at this point, teams kind of look at him as a finishing piece or a piece that might get them over the hump, or maybe a team that was in the play-in might look at him as a player who can get them into the playoffs. Maybe a team that got bounced in the first round sees him as a player who can get them to the second round. He's not necessarily seen as a guy who's going to come in and anchor your entire franchise like Giannis Antetokounmpo. So that's what Jake Fisher was saying. So from the Phoenix Suns perspective, meanwhile, they're operating with urgency. They've privately let all the coaching candidates, when they were going through their coaching search, know that a Durant trade is more a matter of when, not if. So they're exploring a trade before the draft. And reportedly, they're seeking pick compensation, young assets, and a starting caliber center. The Raptors have all 3. The strength of any return will depend on how many teams the Suns can pull into a bidding war. As of right now, how many teams are actually interested in Kevin Durant? We can certainly talk about that. But per my money, it's probably the Raptors, the Spurs, potentially, the Heat, the Hawks, the Knicks. This is kind of where this is going. Maybe you can pull in Dallas, right? But let's talk about why Toronto makes sense. Enter the Toronto Raptors, one of those rumored suitors per Jake Fisher. Just call him Blake Fisher. For Durant, Toronto checks a lot of boxes. Masai Ujiri brings front office stability and player-first leadership, and he knows it, right? Darko Rajakovic is a modern basketball thinker who knows how to use versatile scorers. I mean, this is a guy who really thinks the game, and if a coach does not know what they're doing, KD is not buying. A potential supporting cast of Scotty Barnes, Emmanuel Quickley, and Brandon Ingram, or another star via sign and trade, would give KD the best offensive structure he's had since Golden State, in my humble opinion. KD has a documented affection, previously mentioned, for Toronto. He's spoken highly of the Raptors, spoken highly of Scotty Barnes. He's spoken highly of Brandon Ingram. He's spoken highly of the organization, and he grew up admiring them during the Vince Carter era. The Raptors aren't a media circus. I mean, not quite. Not quite New York, not quite LA. They're focused, professional, and built for player development and long-term buy-in. And if you look at the culture that the Raptors have cultivated under Darko Rajakovic, that's really what I'm speaking to. This is a fun group. This is a group. I have listened to Kevin Durant talk about basketball since 2005. You got to understand how much I love this guy. You don't understand it because I didn't have a podcast in 2005, 2006, 2007, so you can listen to me talking about this guy. I have listened to every interview he's ever done. I have a very good working understanding of how he views the game of basketball, and I have actually learned tremendous amounts listening to him talk about basketball, about the player experience, the athlete experience, and generally speaking, what's his beef with modern offenses? What's his issue with teams? What's his issue with front offices? I understand this guy. I've listened to every word. The Raptors make sense for him. This isn't a team that is asking Kevin Durant to save them. It's a team asking him to elevate them. Okay. And I think that is very crucial at this stage of his career, at the age of 36, that he is not being asked to babysit. Okay. A trade for Kevin Durant isn't just about a fit on paper. It's about making KD believe. A happy, locked-in Kevin Durant is still one of the most efficient and devastating scorers in league history. So what does he want? This is my guess. I haven't reached out to Kevin Durant for comment. I did not reach out to the contact that might be able to verify this, but just based on what I've read, what I've heard, and what I've seen from him, this is what I think he wants at this stage of his career: to compete at a high level, to play with high IQ, talented teammates. And believe me, that IQ is very important. To be a part of a stable organization and leadership he trusts, to feel valued, not used, to join a system that understands how to preserve his longevity, and crucially, a team that's ready to financially commit to his final NBA chapter. I want to make it very clear to everybody that you understand this. Kevin Durant did not go to Golden State because he's ducking the smoke or because he wanted an easy go at it. He went to Golden State for the same reason that he would want to come to Toronto. No, the Toronto Raptors are not a 65, 72 win team. No, the Toronto Raptors do not have Steph Curry. No, the Raptors do not have a defensive anchor like Draymond Green or even a movement shooter like Klay Thompson. What they do have, however, is a style of basketball that fits his very specific game at this stage of his career. Again, KD 2012, 2015, very different player. KD 2018, very different player, but at every iteration, still very efficient, still great. And at this stage of his career, and I don't know how many people watching Phoenix Suns games or just trolling because they missed the playoffs, he is still a great player. He is still an all-star. He is still borderline all-NBA. He is 36 years old, soon to be 37, and aging like fine wine. But most importantly, he has a lot in common with players who've aged phenomenally well in the past. I continue on with this. That the trade mechanics. So what would it look like potentially? Talked about it before. RJ Barrett, Ochai Agbaji, 2026 top 4 protected first round pick, and Jakob Poeltl. That's their center need filled. That's their co-star, pseudo co-star next to Devin Booker that they can actually build with. That's a future asset that they can use in a trade. That's Ochai Agbaji. That's wing depth. I'm sorry to tell you, unless a whole bunch of people come to the table and start offering way more, I think that based on their hiring, based on how they're going about things, I think that they are going to prioritize a little bit of youth as opposed to a competitive piece like a Karl Anthony Towns. Now, if the Knicks blow them away with a cat offer, maybe the Raptors can't compete. I'm not suggesting you get into a bidding war and start offering up multiple first-round picks. I think it's very important to realize that KD would have to be happy, which is to say he would have to buy in to the situation, okay? And the situation is very simple, right? He is an expiring contract, $54 million. Any team that is trading for him is signing up with the risk that he would not be happy, and no one is signing up for an unhappy Kevin Durant. We've already seen it. He pouts. He does not like it, and he gets this bad reputation as this malcontent. I think he's just been in a lot of really shitty situations personally, and I think the Raptors have the kind of culture and infrastructure to actually shield him from that. But any team that is signing up for Kevin Durant at this stage of his career is also signing up for the fact that he could leave. So you're signing up with a risk. And I believe that that is a similar risk to the one that the Raptors had with Pascal Siakam, where a lot of teams were like, I would love to trade for this guy if he had 3 years left on his deal, but he's not giving me the all go ahead that he's going to sign here. It wasn't until the Raptors found Indiana Pacers, where Pascal was willing to go, that they were able to get something of value back for Pascal. But the Raptors couldn't just throw him away to Atlanta. They wanted to, they tried to, but Pascal wouldn't agree to assign. They wanted to send him to Sacramento. He didn't want to go. So any place that KD goes is either viewing him as a rental, which is going to skew. It's going to dictate how much they give back. No one is giving up 4 first-round picks for a rental. Or it's going to be a place where KD is going to be foundational. And he wants to be there because he has ultimate control in the situation. He's an unrestricted free agent. He is still one of the most demanded names in the league. He can choose where he wants to go in 2 years or in a year from now. So nobody is going to sign up for this. This is not, Kawhi Leonard damaged goods in his prime. This is Kevin Durant towards the end of his journey. This is a completely different thing. It's not LeBron James on an expiring, when he's 27 years old. So I think that this is a very competitive offer. That's a value that, as I said, Phoenix might be willing to accept, especially if they want to retool around Booker and Beal with better depth. Personal note, and I say this, of course, personal note. From 2007 to 2020, Kevin Durant was my favorite player. So for 13 years, I defended him as the best scorer in the game, a guy whose game was both elegant and lethal. And watching him get dragged online and treated like a disposable piece by the media and fans has been really rough. I don't want Kevin Durant's final chapter in the NBA to be spent on a dysfunctional team or an unstable system. I want him to write the final chapter of this legendary career somewhere that values him, not just as a contract. Okay. And Toronto gives him that chance. Chapter 5 could be the best one yet, because let's be honest, that Golden State chapter was a little bit like, it was great. On one hand, it was absolutely great. I get that. And I get why you would think that. But at the same time, it was a little bit bittersweet too, wasn't it? Because, I think that that's really important. Hold on. There's a slide that's missing that I didn't point out. So I'm actually going to put that up on the, hold on. Give me 1 sec here. I got to present it as an image. I missed it. My bad. I rushed this. Timing. We got to talk about the timing. Giannis, timing, and strategic patience. So Durant's market is directly tied to the looming question around Giannis Antetokounmpo. So while Giannis hasn't requested a trade formally, half the league's contenders are holding their breath, waiting for any movement out of Milwaukee. And that's uncertainty is temporarily suppressing the value for Kevin Durant, because if you've noticed, a lot of the same teams that want one are the same teams that are being rumored for the other. They both play the same position at this point. So most teams are not looking at both. They're looking at one or the other. And if you're asking me, obviously, Giannis is the bigger draw. So for any team that is going to trade for Kevin Durant right now, and by the way, trades can be made right now. I feel like a lot of people don't know that because trades at this point are very uncommon, but a trade can be made like next week. Okay, you could have a Kevin Durant trade right now. The only reason teams often wait until June 30th to finalize is because the tax situation. But yeah, you could agree to it. You could absolutely handshake on a deal right now for Kevin Durant tonight if you wanted to. And I think that for any team that is just going to wait it out and see what happens with Giannis, because they don't want to miss out. Like, what if, right? You look at the San Antonio Spurs, you look at the New York Knicks, all teams that are rumored to be making offers. The Atlanta Hawks are a team that has emerged recently for Giannis. They are rumored to be looking at his agent as potentially their next general manager or one of their lead executives. They have the assets to make it happen. Jalen Johnson, Zachary Risichet. Are they going to part out one of those assets right now and then pull themselves out of the Giannis contention? I don't think so. So they could be waiting. New York could be waiting. San Antonio could be waiting. So you take some of those pieces out, and maybe it's just the Raptors and one other team. Maybe it's just the Raptors and Dallas, or the Raptors and the Heat. And maybe the Raptors can beat those offers, right? Because I don't know what those teams can really offer, and the Raptors have more picks. I'm not suggesting getting uncomfortable here, but beyond the pick package that I suggested, maybe the most I would do is maybe another second round pick, maybe another couple second round picks. I'm certainly not suggesting, parting out Grady and Ochai plus Jacoby or anything like that. I'm not suggesting going nuts here. All I'm suggesting is that you get to the table early, because there will be fewer bidders. But the minute that Giannis, right? Once Giannis is either pulled off the hypothetical table or teams tire of waiting, Durant's value could spike. And teams who miss on free agency's limited pool, because there aren't any players like Kevin Durant or any player of Kevin Durant's actual value on free agency. Jimmy Butler has already signed an extension. Miles Turner is very likely to sign an extension. Once you remove him, they may view KD as the only viable frontcourt star trade available. So any team that strikes early on Durant effectively removes itself from the Giannis sweepstakes, as I mentioned. But in doing so, it may secure itself a transformational player at a slight discount. Now, to those of you who have, written in the comments, but Kevin Durant is not transformational. Kevin Durant is 36 years old, blah, 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 blah. Let me pull up something that hopefully
Scotty talks about.
Well, hold on 1 sec. Let me pull up something that can hopefully, I need to go through the slide. Hang on 1 sec. Give me 1 sec here. Pull this up again. Okay. So let me pull this up and make this bigger for myself. These are 3 players. Any guesses on who these 3 players are? So player number 1 on the left is Shaquille O'Neal. Player number 2 in the middle is Dirk Nowitzki. Player number 3 on the far right side is Russell Westbrook. Now, personally, I wanted to show you all 3 of these players because they are 3 former league MVPs. They are 3 of the greatest players that you've probably seen in your lifetime. They are 3 players that you have actually witnessed go, probably, if you're a normal fan. If you only watched basketball in 2019, you did not see Shaq's decline. Okay, fine. But if you've watched basketball and you're roughly 30, 35, you remember prime Shaquille O'Neal, and then you remember old Shaquille O'Neal on the Phoenix Suns. You remember prime Dirk Nowitzki, and then you remember super old Dirk Nowitzki, right? So the reason I wanted to bring up these three players is because I think Giannis has a lot in common with two of them and not a lot in common with one of them. And I think KD has a lot in common with all of them, but specifically one of them. So when you look at Shaquille O'Neal, so I've highlighted 2000, 2001, right? That is like, that's the year after he won MVP. So he won an MVP. Shaq won an MVP when he was 27 years old in 99. Okay. So that year he had a value of replacement of 9. And I'm just going to use value of replacement because it is a cumulative stat, which factors in box plus minus. And it is cumulative in the sense that it actually does value players who play more minutes and more games. And you, as a franchise, if you're looking at your team benefiting from a star player coming in, obviously the more that star plays for you, the more value you'll extract. So I'm gonna use value of replacement, even though it is not the perfect statistic, to show you value as it regresses over age. So you have Shaq at 9.0 value of replacement. That is really the peak of his career at 27. We see it regress a little bit through the three-peat, 7.1, 6.1, 5.5. And you start to go almost down like clockwork a little bit. There's a minor blip, let's say, in the Matrix that first year in Miami where he's super jazzed and probably got into really good shape coming into that season, to make a good impression on a new organization. But realistically, it was pretty much a steady decline after 27 years old. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. Obviously, if you watch Shaq's career, he wasn't necessarily always the greatest about getting in shape. He was a player who relied on phenomenal athleticism and athletic gifts. He wasn't a good free throw shooter. He wasn't a good outside shooter. He wasn't necessarily like the most laterally gifted athlete, but he was someone who had a lot of gifts. And obviously, till the very end, he remained, right, 7 feet tall and 300 plus pounds. So there was still an advantage. He never like completely fell off. He was never like one of the 150 worst players in the league. But I will remind you that Shaquille O'Neal did retire at 38. And had he played until 40 or 41 or whatever, however, whatever age we got Hakeem Olajuwon at, you would have seen an even steeper fall off. So Shaq had 1 year, 2 years, 3 years with negative box plus minus in his late 30s. That's nuts. That's nuts. When you think about how impactful that dude was and how that stat favors players like him, you really do understand how much that regression fell off. And where did that real steep decline happen? Well, let's see. If we highlighted 29, so 28, age 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, the steep decline actually happened at 33, where he fell from 4.7 value replacement to 2.1. To give you context with 2.1, that is probably lower than Scotty Barnes right now. This is one of the 10 greatest players of all time. And at the age of 33, he was pretty much less impactful than Scotty Barnes. That does really speak to the injuries that he was sustaining at that time. But the very next year, even though the numbers were fine, the impact was gone. Okay. So but past 34, 35, he was definitively like in his role player arc. And then you saw him go from Miami to Phoenix to Cleveland to Boston, kind of just, moving around. Phoenix wanted to use him as Shaq, but he wasn't Shaq anymore, right? So even though he made an All-NBA third team later on, again, I think that's voters. I think that's injuries. I think that's just his name. I think that's box score production. But the actual value never came close to that 9.0 we saw at 27. Move on to the far right, we have Russell Westbrook, right? With Russell Westbrook, I've highlighted once again his age 27 season, which was his MVP season in 2016, 2017. And right after that, you saw a decline and another decline. And then you just see this decline going down, down, down into his 30s, where it's just not Russell Westbrook anymore. The numbers have fallen, the impact has fallen, the defense has fallen, the injuries have risen. So those are two players that had a lot in common with Giannis, in my opinion. Downhill drivers, paint dominant, super athletic, very gifted athletes, poor free throw shooters, shaky outside shooters. There's a lot in common with these two. All-time greats. Both all-time greats, right? Both physical specimens, huge rebounders, all of them, right? But as those rebounds decline, as that step declines, as the athleticism and the twitch it goes away, you start to see one injury can take all of it away very quickly, can half the value. We're already seeing that regression with Giannis. You may not actually care too much to look into the numbers, because the numbers, the raw box score numbers that you look at are still there. But I promise you, when you look at the all-time great teams, they have players who carry their weight in VORP, 100%. Look at the middle, though. You have Dirk Nowitzki, a guy who actually aged a lot better than the other two. And there's a big reason for that. And it's not because he was necessarily better in his peak than either one. In fact, they both peaked technically higher than Nowitzki. Durant also peaked higher than all of these players. Just so we're clear, Durant has the best peak of all of these players. Durant peaked higher than Westbrook, higher than Shaq. I mean, debatable higher than Shaq. He peaked closer to Shaq than Dirk, is what I'll say. Durant's better than Dirk. Historically, he's better than Dirk. He may not end up being regarded as, more revered than Dirk. Maybe he won't be more respected than Dirk, but I promise you, in the peak of his power, peak of Dirk's power, Durant clears like by a mile. He's way better. So what I say this to say that this is a worse version of the Durant archetype with less athleticism to begin with, less twitch, less burst, again. And look at how he aged from his prime, which was, if you look at the 7.4, 7.9 that he accumulated in that, 27 to 28 range, look at how gracefully it kind of just fell off. There was no dramatic fall off. You can consider 4.5 to 3.0 a dramatic fall off, but then a couple of years later, he still had a 4.7, a 2.4, a 2.7, a 1.0, a 2.4, 2.1. And I'm sure Dirk Nowitzki was not monitoring his box plus minus and his value of replacement when he chose to retire, but it is kind of ironic that the last year he was still an all-star and that his value of replacement was literally negative. So the numbers can still fool you. A player can still put up 22, 23, 24, and they can be empty calories, zero impact because they're getting destroyed on defense because they're not as efficient anymore. Kobe Bryant is a great example of this. Kobe Bryant post Achilles. You should look at his analytics. You should look at his percentages. They fell off a cliff. So that's the point. The twitch, that athleticism, when it goes hard. And you can't generate those advantages anymore because at the other end, it may still look the same on one night or another night or one great performance, but for the most part, it's not going to be the same. Now, KD certainly has fallen a really long way from his, 9 point, 11 point, type of value of replacement seasons. But I do want to let you know that he's still super freaking efficient. The efficiency is going nowhere at all. The Durant disrespect, I said, this is a tweet that I posted yesterday, and I said the KD disrespect on this app is insane. You're talking about a dude who's put up an insanely efficient number on his career of 27.2, 7, and 4.4. Those are his career averages, okay? 27.2 is his career average. What did he put up last year before the All-Star game, before he became disgruntled, before it was obvious that Phoenix was not making the playoffs, before Bradley Beal situation, the trade deadline, them trying to trade him to New York and all that bullshit that happened, he was actually averaging more than his career averages in terms of points per game. He was actually more efficient from three than his career average. On his career, he shoots 39% on his career from three. Last year, that just happened, he was 43% from three last year total. That's 4% above his career average. And after the All-Star break, where his shot attempts went down and he became less of a part of the offense and he took more of an off-ball role, 47% from three. You're telling me that this is regression? You're talking about one of the 12 best players on the planet, even right now. Even right now. This is not role player Kevin Durant, okay? And he is the definition of a big fish. So miss me with all that regression talk. This dude is going to be unstoppable at 37, 38, 39, and probably 40. And probably until he retires. And it's just going to come down to, does he have a team that is really going to buy into the vision of KD and really be able to put the pieces around him that are going to be able to maximize what he does well. And he does a lot of things well. So my pitch on the Kevin Durant thing is, 3 years ago, y'all really, really wanted this guy. You were willing to ship Scotty, Pascal, you were willing to ship up OG, anything really to get this guy. What has changed? Well, he's 3 years older. I think that is something. But isn't it interesting that today you wouldn't trade Scotty straight up? Sorry, you wouldn't. You would. I mean, I think most of you wouldn't trade Scotty straight up. But 3 years ago, you would have added Scotty and like 6 first-round picks. This is why you must factor in how players age. This is why. Okay, you have to understand that a player like Scotty Barnes may never hit the apex of a Durant or a Giannis. Maybe not. I'm not guaranteeing it. Maybe he will. Who knows? But what is for sure is that over the next 3 to 4 years, you don't know what injury, what is going to happen. You don't know how fast that regression is going to be. And if that Giannis regression comes within a year, you're holding a declining asset, and you, by the way, signed him up to like the last big deal. You know, that's the worst deal. That's typically reserved for like franchise legends. That Giannis next deal, it's going to be like 70 million a year. And he's going to have a market, and he's going to have you by your balls, because you will have traded all of your picks to get him. You will have no maneuverability. You will have to pay him, and he will sign the longest deal possible, 4 years, probably 280 million, 300 million, something like that. It is going to be like cataclysmic. 40 to 50%, I don't know, 45% of your cap, like whatever is the maximum amount allowable, that's what he will sign for, because that's who he is. And his box score production at that point when he signs that deal, because he's going to be extension eligible, I believe, next summer, right? He has 1 more year on this deal, and then he has a player option. So you want to get ahead of it, or you face the worst offseason of your life wondering if he's going to leave for nothing. So the point here is, he will not be worth his next contract. I can almost guarantee it. Throughout the life of that contract, he will not earn that money. I want to say almost no chance. Players his age almost never do. Kobe didn't earn his last contract. Dirk and Duncan only earned their last contract primarily because they took discounts. Most of these stars, when they fall off, they don't earn it. If you remember Russell Westbrook on 50 million or whatever the hell he was making, 45 million, he was not earning that contract. Chris Paul didn't earn his last big deal towards the end. Most of these stars don't. Bradley Beal isn't earning it right now. Okay. Like you just, it's hard to say this about all-time greats, especially when they're still great, but the regression is coming, and it's coming fast. Giannis cannot shoot from 3. Is the only thing that is actually going to help him age gracefully is that, and health. And steadily, we're seeing more and more injuries with Giannis as well. So all I say this to say that with Kevin Durant at 37, signing an extension won't be like, I don't think he would be asking for like 60 million or 65 million or something crazy like that. I think it would be a little bit more reasonable. But Giannis would be extension eligible at the age of 33, at which point it is still perfectly normal for a player to ask for that money. Paul George, I will remind you, has a little bit in common, with Giannis, in that, he's also twitchy, but he's a better shooter. He was top 3 in MVP voting. Giannis just finished 3rd in MVP voting. Paul George was top 3 in MVP voting before the Clippers traded for him, right? They traded Shea. They traded 5 first-round picks. Those picks turned into like phenomenal players, a lot of them. They've basically created the dynasty in waiting that you're seeing in the finals. And Paul George is being, I don't know, probably shopped for a buyout right now. That's how much shit can change in 4 years. The LA Clippers, who 4 years ago saw a window to a title contention with Kawhi and Paul George, parted ways with their lottery pick, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who they very much believed in at the time, and a lot of people believed in at the time, plus 5 first-round picks, plus Danilo Gallinari, plus a lot of other stuff. They gave up so much to get that one guy. Okay, and Sam Presti took them to the cleaners because he knew they were desperate. He knew they were willing to pay 180% because they had their eyes on Kawhi and they didn't want to lose Kawhi. So what happened? They took 2 assets at the height of their value. The Raptors get no credit for rehabbing Kawhi's value, but I promise you, the player that you got in the door for DeMar DeRozan and picks or whatever was worth half of the player that went out the door in free agency. That dude, had he been open to doing a sign and trade with the Raptors, what the Raptors could have extracted for the guy. He was coming off the greatest playoff run we had seen in 20 years. Like the only runs comparable to Kawhi runs were like Michael Jordan runs, and people had just watched him win a championship. The value of this guy was like higher than ever, and he was healthy, and people were like, oh my God, he's motivated and he's not a discontent. When the Raptors picked up Kawhi, his value was in the dumps. I think, what was the offer from the Celtics? Jaylen Brown, at the time, Jaylen Brown was not like superstar, right? He's still not a superstar, in fairness, right? But you get my saying. He was younger. DeMar DeRozan was seen as a more sure thing at the time, I guess, for the Spurs. But shit, man, but the co-star that they saw in Paul George had just finished third in MVP voting. Third. If you look at Paul George that year, I actually want to look it up. Hang on one second. I'm going to pull this up for you just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about here. Insane. Okay. This is the year that Paul George left the Oklahoma City Thunder. Third in MVP voting. 28 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 2.2 steals at the age of 28. And Sam Presti knows something that a lot of people don't, which is that there is a steep regression that players experience usually around the age of 28. And the very fucking next year, he went from an MVP candidate, third in MVP voting, to never getting another MVP vote again. The best we ever saw from him again was an injury-riddled 2020, lockout shortened, whatever. Was it lockout? No, sorry. Was that the COVID year? I think it was. Yeah. The bubble year. 23.3 points per game. Where is the 28 points per game again? Never saw it. Dude, this guy is 28 to 33. Where is Giannis right now in this little trajectory? And miss me with all that, oh, Paul George is not Giannis. Shut up, man. Paul George is one of the coldest players on the fucking planet. This is an all-NBA guy. This is the guy who was top 3 in MVP voting. This guy who's been, like finished in it, like first team All-NBA or third team All-NBA so many times. He's first team All-NBA in 2019, right? Third team All-NBA, third team All-NBA, third team All-NBA. Yeah, he's not quite Giannis. I get it. But this is not some bum, right? And where is Giannis right now? This is Giannis right here. 31, age 31. So now the numbers didn't fall off that much, but I want you to see the numbers that really did fall off. I haven't even looked at these, and I can guarantee they fell off. Look at that value of replacement, bro. 6.6. Where did it go the year he left OKC? Here's a fun fact for you. In his first 3 years in the Clippers, for the Clippers, he almost matched his single year value of replacement for the OKC Thunder. You want to talk about buying a declining asset? That's a declining asset. Now I want to actually show you Kawhi Leonard, because I think this will be eye-opening as hell for you. Just in case you want to put Giannis on a tier 1 superstar level, okay? And I want to show you this because it's important to realize this is, let me show you the height of Kawhi Leonard. Let's map out the peak value year. This is the peak value year right here. 7.1 value for replacement in 74 games. That is the peak value. The very next year, he was probably on track to have an even better year, but unfortunately, his prime was cut short a little bit because of those injuries. But it's worth noting that he had some phenomenal years. Toronto, Clippers first year, Clippers second year. These are high impact years. But the injuries have created a lot of problems here, right? 31, 32. At age 32, he is All-NBA second team. That value from age 32 to age 33, look at that fall off. And I can all but guarantee that next year will be a slight regression, if not, but where he is in this little sector of his career versus where he was in this sector of his career, it will not be similar. You can look at Tracy McGrady. You can look at so many stars. In fact, I dare you to point to a star that does not meet this model of regression past the age of 28. Please help me understand what you guys are seeing in, oh, we're going to have 5 chances with Giannis. How many times do you have to watch a team go through this like absolutely stupid idea before you realize it's a stupid idea, right? Right? This. I'm giving Giannis whatever he wants. You know who you sound like? You know who you sound like? You sound like Lawrence Frank. You sound like Lawrence Frank when they were trying to sign Kawhi and, trade for PG and saying, yo, we're getting the two of the 5 best players in the league to put together. That was the sales pitch. Lawrence Frank went up to Steve Ballmer and said, you do this deal not because OKC deserves all this compensation for Paul George, but because you have to think of it as we're trading Shea plus Gallinari plus all this other stuff, all the picks for Kawhi plus Paul George, who are 2 top 5 players in the league. Now, the question I ask is the very next year, were they both top 10 players? Today, do you think either of those players are top 15 players in terms of actual value? Not hypothetical, what they could do in 1 game or 2 games in a playoff series. Actual value. They are not. They have never both at the same time been even remotely close to what the Clippers thought they were signing up for. Why? And by the way, I think it's worth noting, they were both younger when they went to the Clippers than Giannis was. Kawhi was 28 when he went to the Clippers. Paul George was, I think, 29, 30 when he went to the Clippers. They really sold themselves on, yo, we got 5 years. And they didn't get 1 year. So that's my point. When you are making a trade for Kevin Durant on one hand, like making, sort of a Venn diagram of these 2 trades, the only overlap is that you have to match around $50 million of salary. But in the Giannis trade, that $50 million of salary is probably going to be Scotty Barnes, who is a foundational piece. And it's going to be 5 to 6 years of draft pick control, which is also the only things you have to actually pivot out of some of the bad contracts and disastrous signings that you have. I'm not guaranteeing you that, as much as I would bet that Giannis is going to age a lot worse than Kevin Durant and that maybe 3 years from now, they're actually pretty similar players. I would probably say the gap between them is going to shrink. That's what I would say, because I think that KD will age more in Dirk territory, and I think Giannis will age more in, I think he'll age like Shaq, but better. And I think KD will age like Dirk, but better. Like, these are better versions of both players, is what I'm saying. So in that vein, what I'm saying is the gap will slowly shrink between these 2 players. At no point am I saying that KD will be better than Giannis ever again. Those days are gone. They were gone 4 years ago. They have never come back. Maybe 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I can make an argument. I don't think I'm going to ever see that day again. But in terms of what you have to pay for these 2 players, totally different. But why is it totally different? And how would it be totally different right now if KD was, I don't know, on the Indiana Pacers instead of Pascal Siakam? That's a question I have for you. Maybe a little thought experiment. Do the Indiana Pacers actually have a shot against OKC if you replace Pascal Siakam with Kevin Durant? I've always mentioned that Indiana does not have a single player that OKC has to double. KD is an automatic double. Now your shooters are open. The best shooters in the league, all on one team, Tyrese Halliburton. Yo, I think if you replace Kevin Durant with Pascal Siakam, yeah, I do think they have a better chance. I think they have a much better chance. In fact, to all the people crying about Pascal Siakam, oh my God, I wish we had Pascal Siakam, blah, 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 blah. We should have kept Pascal Siakam. I actually want to show you something funny too, because I think this is going to be a little bit of, wake up call for people. Now, I don't typically like to just use stat head comparisons, but this is Pascal Siakam versus Kevin Durant this past year. So this is 36-year-old washed Kevin Durant versus on a terrible team with no fucking point guard and not the best offense in the NBA and not Rick Carlisle. No, not the proper situation, in a toxic situation. This is Kevin Durant averaging 26, 6, and 4. So he averages, like, are we kidding here? Do you see the difference between these 2 players? It's not just the numbers. It's the efficiency. It's everything. And Siakam had a really efficient year. Really efficient year. Super efficient. About as efficient as it could be. KD right now is better, in my opinion, than any version of Pascal Siakam ever. But that's the player y'all crying over. I can't believe we had him. But look at what's happened with Pascal's value. Dust Taker saying Pascal Siakam plays defense. Okay. KD doesn't play defense. KD might have actually been their best defender in their starting lineup. Are you kidding me right now? KD is also playing with Bradley Beal and Devin Booker, who were both pylons this year, and Tyus Jones, who's also a pylon, and he also played a chunk of his year with Mark Richards and Yusuf Nurkic. Like, defense is a team thing, okay? Not anymore. Amjad saying KD does not play defense. Are you kidding me right now? KD does not play defense. KD absolutely does play defense. Excuses. You're an idiot. Writing things in big caps doesn't mean that you know anything about what the fuck you're talking about. How about this? How many fucking games of Phoenix did you watch this year? How many games? He a pylon. No, you a pylon. Your life's a pylon. You crazy? I will not tolerate. Nah, get the fuck out of here. Pylon. Are you a child? Fuck out of here. I'm actually gonna put you in a timeout. Go touch grass. Go take a shower. He's a pylon. He's not a pylon. He's not a pylon. I'm not saying he's like some overwhelmingly positive defender or some great, defensive anchor. He's a better defender than, I would say, 80% of your team right now. That I would say 100%. Crazy. So that's my point. There's a lot of animosity about Kevin Durant. Pascal is guarding 1 through 5 in the finals. I will argue that I will agree that Pascal Siakam's defensive effort has been much better in the NBA playoffs, but he is flanked by much better defenders. And the last time I watched KD flanked by competent defense, he's awesome. Okay, like, geez, look, I'll put this like very simply. Kevin Durant is better than Pascal Siakam. Kevin Durant next year will be better than Pascal Siakam has ever been at any point in his career ever. Okay. This is not a comparison. It's not close. If you understand basketball, you know what I'm talking about. Okay. You are talking about the greatest scorer in NBA history versus, not a top 25 scorer of his generation. Like, shut up, man. Come on. Like, this is the type of conversation that drives me crazy. There was like some fucking moron online saying like Kevin Durant didn't do anything. He's just a snake. He just wrote the coattails of Steph Curry and blah, blah, blah. He was the best player on a team with Steph Curry. And you know what? I got a newsflash for you. He won finals MVP over Steph Curry in his prime. And there's the same age. And I would argue he's aging better than him. He's just in a terrible situation. The numbers that I'm showing you on Durant last year, this is like 50 to 60% of what this guy can actually do in a proper context. In a proper context, I assure you, Kevin Durant is still a top 10 to top 12 player in the league. If his numbers may not say it right now, but give Darko Rajakovic this dude, and he will absolutely unlock him in a way that Steve Kerr only did. And you really, there's so much negativity about Kevin Durant, and it's like, your heart really breaks. I do know people who know him, who've known him since high school, and you talk to these people and you get stories off the record about who he is as a teammate and who he is as a person and how he really felt about certain situations and what really happened behind the scenes, and how the media has just been on this complete fucking hit tour with this guy. Like, they just fucking hate him. They hate him. And they want everything around him to be negative. And it's not. This is a guy that teammates love to play with. Okay. I don't think Steph Curry would ever go out and say, yeah, I wasn't like the happiest person on earth playing with Kevin Durant. I would have fucking been happy to play with him forever. I just think KD very correctly identifies bullshit a little too well for his own good. Like, he's pretty bad at ignoring the bullshit. He will clap back at fans. He will clap back at media. He will clap back at teammates. He will clap back at a coach. And when he senses dysfunction and genuine like mess or something like that, he does tend to sour, but I understand that. So the ideal situation for Kevin Durant is a place which is honest, authentic, good for basketball, and good for him, because this is the basketball pure Is that a word? Yes, it is a word. Basketball Puritan. That's the word I would use for Kevin Durant. He is a pure hooper. Like right now, he's in the gym working on his jump shot. Like he is probably working harder than 99.8% of the league right now. And he just came off like a 30-something win season in a dysfunctional organization. And this is a very proud individual, but it's not like chasing validation proud of like, what will people say about me? But rather, I don't want to leave anything in the tank. This is a person who took his rehab very seriously. How he showed up after his Achilles tear should tell you everything about who Kevin Durant is as a competitor. And this is the greatest. I mean, Kobe could not even do what KD did, right? And Kobe was the insane competitor. So everyone thought his career was over when he tore his Achilles. And it wasn't. It was just starting, because there's been 3 chapters since then, right? There has been that Golden State chapter, the Brooklyn Nets chapter, which I hated. I thought the organization was toxic. I thought the management was terrible. I thought the ownership was bad. I thought the team was not good. Pairing him with Kyrie and, and again, you could say inmates ran the asylum. You can say, well, he chose this. He's the one who wanted DeAndre Jordan. He's the one who wanted to team up with Kyrie. He made a bad decision. Nobody said Kevin Durant will make the greatest general manager on earth. I think KD needs structure. I think KD needs stability. I think KD needs a team-first team that is not about chasing stats. I don't think he would have done well with Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam. That's why I wasn't for that trade back then. I don't think he would have done well with Nick Nurse. I think he would have sniffed that bullshit from a mile away. But put him with Darko Rakovic, a player coach who cares about guys 1 through 17. Put him with these, salt of the earth people like Jamal Shed and Jonathan Mobo, these pure hoopers who just want to get better, and give this dude the best final fucking chapter that you could ever write for an all-time great. Look, I remember the final chapter of Larry Bird's career, the final chapter of, Magic's career. Some chapters don't end well, man. I remember the final chapter of Kobe's career, Vince's career. A lot of chapters don't end well. A lot of these stories don't end on a storybook fairy tale type of ending that a lot of us sports fans, quite frankly, nostalgically dream of, that we want our favorite players to have this type of farewell. I don't know if LeBron's going to go out winning another championship. I have no idea. I certainly hope for his legacy that he does. I don't know if Steph's going to get another one, but certainly the Warriors are chasing that. I don't know if Steph and Jimmy get one together or, but I do remember feeling kind of miserable and sad when I saw Michael Jordan in that Wizards uniform carrying that bum-ass roster that he, partially constructed himself. Jahidi White, Kwame Brown. No disrespect to Kwame Brown. Great dude. Really, really great guy, actually. No disrespect. Rip Hamilton, Jerry Stackhouse. I mean, it wasn't right. Michael Jordan, finals. It should have ended in Chicago. It didn't, right? Think about that. Kobe, 60 points. Yeah. But can it distract from the miserable losing season? Kobe was a winner. Think about winning. Vince on his, that final shot with Atlanta. I think about that. Tracy McGrady not being able to get minutes on the bench in San Antonio. Is it a crime that I want one of my favorite players of all time to have a beautiful ending? Is it a crime that I don't think that ending is anywhere near close right now? Is it crazy? Do you know what winning another championship with Toronto would do for Kevin Durant? Especially if he's the leading scorer on that team. Do you know what a beautiful ending to this historic career it would be if he could get this team to the finals and be a huge contributing factor of that? Do you know what a huge benefit this would be to all of your young players, from Grady to Jacoby? Do you know the seriousness? Like I always say, like with great players, there's a gravitas to them. You cannot explain it in words, but I tell you, certain players carry it and other players don't. If you were to meet LeBron James, no matter what you think, because I met a couple of like those figures that make you like, whoa, I can't believe that's him. Couple. Scotty's not one of those guys. Just so we're clear. Scotty's not like all-time great that makes you like want to faint, But if you had the chance to shake hands with a Kobe Bryant or meet a Kawhi Leonard it is a very indescribable feeling of almost feeling like I just don't know how to explain it, but it changes the severity of the moment. It changes severity of life. It puts things into context. It's almost like I know it's just a basketball player. I get that, you know, but yeah, like it's like a legend, you know? There's a moment to that, you know? Think about if you were a WWE fan, what would you do if like, you know, like one of those legends walk through, like Stone Cold Steve Austin? Like that's a legend, man. Like these legends, these icons, they carry like a weight with them. It's in the way that they walk, it's in how they talk, but it's also an influence on everyone around them. They carry that, they carry themselves a certain way. They bring that to organizations and especially young organizations. You know, a young team watching Kevin Durant prepare, show up early every day. My God, I know he didn't start his career here. And you know, it's kind of ironic. This story should have been Toronto's to write to begin with. The year the Raptors won the number 1 overall pick, the NBA decided, in their infinite fucking wisdom, to bar high school athletes from entering the NBA draft. Kevin Durant was our pick. He would have been our pick. I'm almost consumed with this idea that there's no way that Brian Colangelo would have drafted Andrea Bargnani or Greg Oden or any one of those players, frankly, over Kevin Durant. I feel like KD would have won. Everything Brian Colangelo tried to do in basketball was like replicate Kevin Durant, right? And I think about that a lot. He was my favorite player. We won the number 1 overall pick, and then he wasn't there. That sucks, man. And there's so many moments like this, and it just makes me think, I just want his story to end on a great note. And I know that that cannot be guaranteed, that he could walk into Toronto, get traded here, and immediately have a career-ending injury, touch wood, and it would be, you know, like everyone would be just saying like, you fucking idiots, I can't believe you traded all this for a guy who was 36 and his career is over. We just saw it happen with Damian Lillard, man, but this is not something you can predict or project. What I'm saying is, in Toronto, he would have a chance. He would have a chance to be in a place where he's happy. And look, Toronto did a great job of rehabbing Kawhi's entire brand. This city has a magical quality. I don't know what to say about it. I don't know what it says about the city. I don't know what it says about Toronto or Torontonians that y'all can only ever celebrate great players. But I'll tell you that when Vince Carter was actually here, he was pretty much the face of the NBA. He really was. Every highlight, every time you turn on SportsCenter, boom, it's Vince Carter. I was living in New York at the start of Vince Carter and Vinsanity, and I tell you, I was a huge fan of Vince Carter. And who wasn't a fan of Vince Carter, the dunks and whatever? But I'm telling you, man, they shoved this guy down your fucking throat in New York. Like, he was such a big deal. And obviously, like, the first time the Raptors got to the playoffs with Vince, yeah, I watched it. It was so cool. But man, like the promotion around him. And then I think back to Kawhi. And Vince was legit top 5, top 6, top 7 type of player on the ascent, tagged as the next up, next MJ, all that stuff, the highlights and all that stuff. So y'all really like stood behind it. I remember seeing Vince Carter jerseys in like every rap video. I saw them like all over Brooklyn, all over Washington Heights. I was seeing Vince Carter jerseys everywhere, purple, everywhere. It was crazy. Like I remember, you know, I think 2 years later, 3 years later after that, we went to India and Egypt. We seen Vince Carter jerseys in fucking Egypt. You don't realize that Toronto, like when people say he put Toronto on the map, like it's crazy. But what happened when you got Kawhi Leonard? 18 years later, you get Kawhi Leonard, this disgruntled asset, and suddenly, you know, that one interview where Doug Smith asked him a fucking question or whoever the hell asked him a question and he laughs, and suddenly, you know, it's all over the place. And then the historic playoff run, he's all over the place. He was like the most searched term. He was the most trending athlete. He was the face of basketball in 2019. When people think 2019, they think Kawhi Leonard, they think the shot, they think the Raptors championship. Do you understand that kind of impact Giannis has never had that kind of impact, ever. I'm going to be very clear about that. Giannis and Jokic and Shea and Halliburton's having a moment right now, but like they've never had that type of presence beyond basketball. Kawhi and Dine and Vincent, like this eclipses basketball and it goes into something completely different. It goes into culture. It goes into like pop culture. You know what I mean? Like Michael Jordan transcended basketball into like culture. People were shaving their heads and everyone fucking watch a basketball game. Everyone wanted to be like Mike. They didn't even know how to play basketball. Steph Curry has transcended culture. He has transcended the sport, you know? Shaq, Kobe. Yeah, it just so happens that two of the players in the last 25 years who've transcended that sport transcended it as Raptors. And I do believe that those players never did it anywhere else because Vince did not do it in Brooklyn and Kawhi didn't do it in San Antonio and he didn't do it in LA. And so I'm saying if KD comes here and he's got that one or two like boost year where the hypothesis that I have that he's really that dude still, and he can be that dude. Because I'll remind you, Michael Jordan was still winning championships at 36 as the best player in the world. And my hypothesis in 2007 or 2006 when I made that video was KD is Jordan. Like I stamped him. I was like, boom, this is the next one. So I believe that KD has that. I believe, okay, yeah, he's not quite Jordan. He may not have gotten there, but he certainly got a lot closer than Kobe. I'll tell you that. Championships be damned. You may not agree with that. Look at the numbers, look at the game, look at the efficiency, 100%. He got closer as a scorer to Michael Jordan than anybody. I argue with the three-point shot, he may have eclipsed Michael Jordan as a scorer. This is a dude who can 100% have a 1 to 2 year run in Toronto where he supersedes expectations and you see. And you know what? If he doesn't come to Toronto and he goes to some bullshit organization and he's just treated like an expiring contract, don't come at me with all this like you told us KD was going to be great. The only way this is going to work is if he ends up in a really great organization that uses him well, that he trusts, where he's happy. And I believe that that's Toronto. And in Toronto, I believe that KD can have that shine, that moment where he is truly the talk of the league, where he's not being overshadowed by Braun, he's not being overshadowed by Cooper Flag or anything like that, where people are legitimately like, oh my God. Because one thing I have learned through 10 years of making films, 12 years of writing, scripts, 25 years, 20 years plus almost now of writing articles and everything that I write is that people love a comeback story. I want to actually share one of my stories with you as we exit this live. It's something that I penned that I was quite proud of, and it is about the NBA Finals and something that you may not know about the NBA Finals, and it's about Rick Carlisle, and that'll be my final note. And I want to share this because it is also a comeback story, and it's interesting. I've been doing a lot more writing lately, partially because I was starting to feel like I fell off as a writer a little bit. And my girlfriend was like, why do you feel like you're not right? Why do you feel like you're falling off as a writer? And I was like, I don't know. I'm just not writing as much anymore. I'm not writing film scripts anymore. And then I was like, wait a second. I have a verified X account. I can just write shit all day. And so I wanted to write this out. And I hope you guys will enjoy it. And it sets up maybe some context and meaning because that's really what's missing in NBA storytelling, right? And it sets up tomorrow's game 2 and what's on the line for the Pacers. And to anyone who's interested, tomorrow, game 2, playback, I will be there. Player's Choice will be there. It will be a great time. And if the OKC Thunder do manage to go down 0-2, you will see me absolutely tearing my hair out on live. Okay, so this is my article about Rick Carlisle. So I said in the year 2000, and this is a picture, Rick Carlisle with Reggie Miller. In the year 2000, Rick Carlisle stood not at the helm, but near it, his third season as an assistant coach with the Indiana Pacers. Nights of futility had lifted. After years of disappointment, the Indiana Pacers had surged forward, 56 wins strong, the best in the East. Longtime franchise legend Reggie Miller and Jalen Rose steadied a deadly backcourt, and Rick Smits anchored the middle. Larry Bird, the hick from French Lick, Indiana, was leading the reins. They'd vanquished the Bucks, silenced the Sixers, and outlasted the Knicks. At last, a chance at immortality. The franchise's first NBA Finals and a chance at their first championship since the NBA-ABA merger. But history had other plans. Awaiting them stood two titans ascending into myth, Kobe and Shaq. Carlisle and the Pacers could not have known it then, but they were about to become footnotes in the origin of a dynasty, offering up their hopes as sacrifice to the first of 3 straight championships for the Lakers. Then, dissolution. Bird departed without a farewell tour, and Carlisle accepted the head coaching job in Detroit. There, he sculpted the beginnings of a machine that would go on to win it all. But again, fate intervened. Before the fruit of the labor ripened, he was cast aside, replaced by Larry Brown. The title came years later in Dallas. This time, he was on the right side of history. The man, the myth, the legend who thwarted the Heatles' plans of a dynasty. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, LeBron's infamous words. And thanks to Carlisle and later Greg Popovich, it was exactly 2. The championship in Dallas is almost every bit as historic as the one that got away from him in 2004, but one must wonder when he reflects, does he return to that run between 1997 and 2000 in Indiana, to the precipice, that abyss, and now 25 years later, he stands again at that edge, 3 wins from completing a circle that never closed. Is this that fulfillment of a long buried promise, or merely another cruel iteration of being just short, just too early, or just too late? Will Rick Carlisle, now older and no longer in the wings, deliver the Pacers their first championship? Or shall he, once more, be swallowed by the rising tide of a new dynasty? Ashes beneath the feet of tomorrow's gods. From Kobe to Shea, no one said it was going to be easy to be this legendary. Like this video if you liked that article. I hope you did like it. I put about an hour into that. I thought about writing it out as a script for a video, but ended up not doing that. Maybe lazy to make a video, I don't know. But I thought it was cool. Stories are everything, man. And I will tell you right now, the story of my favorite player, a player that I used to dream would come to the Raptors in 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007. I spent so many years sitting here as a Toronto Raptors fan, dreaming of the day that Kevin Durant would be a Raptor. And I believe this guy has a lot left. So the happiest person in Toronto, if that Shams breaks, if that Shams bomb breaks, I don't know what they call it, Shams tweet, Shams alert, whatever, breaks Kevin Durant to Toronto. The happiest person in this city is going to be yours truly. Guaranteed. Okay, let's see if I can answer any questions here. Could you imagine Ulrich being the sponge that he is, learning from Durant? Yes, I can. What you giving up, Penn? I want to hear. I've already told you many times. I would give up Jakob Poeltl, RJ Barrett, and the 2026 first round pick. Top 6, top 4, top 8 protected, and Ochai Baji. Rick Carlisle is such a good coach. I completely agree. Till someone can guard his Hazy pole, there's no answer for him. I don't know who you're talking about. I assume you mean. Oh, and I do want to mention. I hear a lot of people say that they don't want to trade Jakob Poeltl because they're still petrified of not having a center. There is a center that may be available on the open market who is a free agent. I don't know if he will come cheap, but Day'Ron Sharpe. Now, there's a couple players in this draft, maybe. Garrett Queen, Kemba Malawach, who could play a huge load at center or power forward. So you're not completely without options. Obviously, I've made it known. No secrets. I want Carter Bryant in the draft. My target for the second round is slowly emerging as Neoklas Avdalas. Actually, I'm starting to really like that guy. But beyond him, maybe Jameer Watkins, maybe Sion James. There's quite a few. But to me, this is a draft full of wings, and the Raptors have a lot of wings. There aren't a lot of great point guards. There are some people that are being talked up as maybe greater than they really are because of the lack of point guards. I don't think there's a lot of great starting centers in this draft either. There's a lot of 2s and a lot of 3s and a lot of 4s. And the Raptors seem to have a lot of 2s, a lot of 3s, and a lot of 4s. So I understand there's a trepidation about, oh my God, what if we get rid of Jakob Poeltl, etc. But I'm just trying to tell you, you got to give something to get something. And Kevin Durant is a hell of a haul. He's not going to come for free. So obviously, you want shooting around KD. And, Day'Ron Sharpe, not a great shooter, but really, really good player. I think the analytics point to him being a lot better if he got a bigger role. And, there are other players that could be available. Again, you're not parting out all your picks. And if you get KD in the door and, you sign some sort of, let's say, stop plug type of center, you're going to have to commit to a few things, by the way. You're going to have to commit to losing your draft pick next year or the year after, one of those picks. I don't think number 9 should be in play for Kevin Durant. I think the other thing you're going to have to commit to is you're going to have to get MLSE to commit to being a tax team, because Kevin Durant is going to make you a tax team. And once you commit to the tax, now you have more options. Now, again, there's no roster penalty for being a tax team at all. 0. Right? It's only the aprons that become restrictions of, can't aggregate contracts, can't, sign buyout market, whatever. And I think the other thing that maybe a lot of people aren't completely appreciating is that there will be a bunch of teams at the deadline looking to aggressively sell pieces because they're trying to bottom out for the draft. Now, since we've already committed to Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, etc., and we're not going to be tanking next year, why not go and try to go win a championship instead? So my thought would be, if I was in the Raptors front office and I had a direct line to Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster, my thought would be, why don't we try a stop plug solution? Like, let's not go crazy and try to get, the center of our future or whatever in the draft. If the best player available is a wing, take the wing, right? Play the wing. And maybe at the deadline, trade one of your other wings or the wing. Who knows? I mean, players have been traded in their rookie season before. Trade one of those wings, right? Now that you've had a better chance to evaluate a Carter Bryant next to a Grady Dick, next to a Jacoby Walter, maybe you don't have place for all 3 of them, right? Because they're all coming off the bench and they're all playing 2 positions. Maybe Carter can play a little bit of 4, right? So, and Carter actually can play 4. That's the funny part. Carter can totally play 4. He can play 3, 4, 2, whatever. That's the great thing. But maybe Grady Dick plus a first round pick can actually get your center at the deadline, is what I'm saying. So, you honestly think this team plus Durant and a signed center minus Poeltl and RJ makes us contenders? Well, there's another thing that you're missing from that. Do you remember that guy named Brandon Ingram? Yeah, we traded for him. So, yeah, Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, and Kevin Durant are the most talented trio in the Eastern Conference. I will stake my life on that. You're not stopping those 3 players on the same court at the same time. It is a fucking cheat code. You're talking about 3 guys who are 6'9" to 6'11", none of whom, in my opinion, can be stopped one-on-one. 2 of whom are exceptional passers. One of whom might actually be like one of the best passers in the league, in my opinion. And you've got Emmanuel Quickley coming off of like 100 screens. Yeah, you just need a center who can set screens. Okay, this is not that complicated. It is a huge team. It is a cheat code. And frankly, if you go back to a video that I posted a while ago, it was 2 days before the Brandon Ingram trade. I was talking about pairing Brandon Ingram with Devin Booker and Scotty Barnes and how that would be the most talented trio. I actually think Kevin Durant is a better player than Devin Booker. So this would be even more of a cheat code, right? Rob, what about Scotty's touches? I don't care. Okay, this is the thing. I don't care. Like, I know that people are like, oh my God, he's just a Scotty fan who's masquerading as a Raptors fan. No, I want Scotty in a winning situation. And I believe that Brandon Ingram and, Kevin Durant are very unselfish players. They may be high volume shot takers and they may be big time scorers, but they are very unselfish. Scotty's going to have a lot of touches in this offense. He will be a facilitator. He will be a creator for these guys. He can get a ton of touches. He can play off the ball a little bit. Scotty can still average 20, 22. I mean, he doesn't have to average 25 to make this work. He can average 22, 12, and he can average 22, 10, and 8. Okay. That would be like if the Raptors go out and win 60 wins, he'll be in MVP conversations, right? So that's my point. Like we gotta think about this from a holistic basketball perspective. And yeah, I understand that your defense, you think your defense might be a little bad if your center position is not great, but your center position wasn't great defensively this year, and your defense was still fine. So Scotty can obviously anchor a lot defensively. I don't think you're going to be a top 10 defense with this team. I do think you have a chance to be a top 3 offense with this team. And let me think. Is there another top 3 offense and not a top 10 defense that's currently doing really well? Yeah, the Indiana Pacers. It's very similar. And of course, you have Carter Bryant potentially coming off the bench. He could be a great defender for you. Jacoby has quick twitch, athleticism. Jonathan Mobo is a positive defender. It's not like you're depleting yourself of defense. You're not sending out all defensive players. You're sending out RJ Barrett, who's a defensive liability, Ochai Agbaji, who's slightly average defensively, and Jakob Poeltl, who's a good defender. And you're getting back KD, who I suspect is actually still a pretty good defender. So I don't know. Slytherman saying top 3 offense is a stretch in my opinion. Top 5, top 3, top 4. Yeah, man. It's just, look, offense is very simple. Like, it's complicated because it's made complicated, but in the end, it's very simple. If you can't stop me one-on-one and you can't stop my teammate one-on-one, we're probably going to score. It's not complicated unless we're completely stupid and we're super selfish and we force bad shots. And Brandon Ingram doesn't force a lot of bad shots. And I don't think Scotty Barnes forces a lot of bad shots. And I don't think Kevin Durant forces bad shots at all. Like, these guys are all, like, I don't know how to explain it. It just, to me, is not 2K. This is real life. This is not a team that there's a team in the league that is really equipped to stop this type of team. Like maybe the Spurs with Wemby, and if they add Giannis, they would be able to do something with this. Maybe, the OKC Thunder, but apart from those 2 teams, like, there just aren't a lot. Maybe Dallas, with Cooper Flag plus AD plus, that's a lot of front court offense. They'll be really equipped to do something with this. But I just think an overwhelming amount of talent, beautiful basketball, 3 all-star type of players playing together, super unselfish, all coming together at the right stage, all under a coach that preaches togetherness and moving the basketball and beautiful offense. The Raptors have been like number 1, number 2, number 3 pretty much consistently throughout Darko's entire tenure in terms of actually generating efficient looks. Their offense works. The problem is they just don't make shots. So you're adding 2 of the best shot makers in the NBA to a team that had none of them. It's really hard to explain to people how good Kevin Durant is in the context of 2025 because people are like such prisoners of the moment and they just can't think about it. But the very fact that I'm getting pushback on KD is better than Pascal Siakam should tell you everything you need to know about how market value fluctuates based on prisoners of the moment. Anyways, I got y'all. I'll talk to y'all later. Have a great one. Like this video if you want Kevin Durant in Toronto. And if you don't like this video, if you don't want Kevin Durant in Toronto, dislike this video. Actually, no. Hold on. No. If you want KD in Toronto, like this video. If you don't want KD in Toronto, write your comment when this video goes live, and I will answer it tomorrow with my morning coffee. Peace.